Yes, I can. Hi, Ishmael. How are you?
Hi, Jasmine. Looking great as always. Glad to meet you and congratulations on this role. I really love
Thank
what you
you.
did in this movie. So many places to start. I guess the good start would be I know how you love to create backstories for your characters normally,
Yes.
but in this situation, you have a real person. So I was wondering how much backstory did you need to create? Did you go to the horse's mouth for everything, or did you still go through your normal process with your character creation?
It was a mixture of both. From the start, I was told that Mary Joan is a very private person, and this was George's story, so she didn't really want to have much involvement in it, which I completely understood and appreciated. So I did some digging online. And the only thing that I could really find with her was a 3-minute YouTube clip talking about her growing up in Monrepo, St. Lucia, and coming to America and George proposing to her and their life thereafter. So I must have watched that clip like 500 times. Um, just extracting as much as I could, both from her personal life, her mannerisms, and also, her accent. And then I gathered the facts, and then based on that, I just kind of used my imagination and filled in the blanks as much as I could.
Got it, got it. Now, I think one challenge you see with sports movies is particularly when it's focused on the man, and then you have the women characters, the love interest or the wife, is making sure they're not just relegated to cheerleaders or just like a prop in the movie. How were you able to do that with this character, just make sure that didn't happen in this case, even though George is the main focus?
Yeah, that was always my biggest concern, going into it. And one thing that I appreciated about our director, George Tillman, is that he did not see Mary Joan Foreman as just a supportive character. He saw her as integral to Mr. Foreman's story and his legacy. So we had a lot of talks about what she was able to bring to Mr. Foreman in terms of being a spiritual guide and a nurturer and a disciplinarian, but also what were her own inner conflicts, right? She's still a human being, a complex human being. What was it like for him to tell her that he was going back to boxing and 45 years old, 320 pounds overweight, and she knew nothing about his boxing career beforehand, only what she heard, and it wasn't good. So there was a lot of fear that came with that, and having to struggle with that fear while stepping into the role of like supporting him through all of this was very much a struggle for her. And I wanted to make sure that I held that within my body, because the potential of losing the one thing that she loved the most, her family, would have ripped her apart. And it was important to hold on to that throughout the story.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now you see, as my background, I have both of you up there.
I love it.
The chemistry was great. So, and I know when you did the Tomorrow War, when you were working with Key Powers, you talked about you guys spoke a lot about trying to get that chemistry right. Did you go through the same process with Khris, or was everything just completely natural as the film progressed?
No, Chris Davis is wonderful. It was so natural. He was a great leader and a great just artist in general on that set. He brought so much. He brought so much heart and so much nuance to the role of George Foreman. And in between takes and things like that, we just talked and we were very vulnerable with each other. And I think anytime you allow yourself to be vulnerable with someone, you make that instant connection with them, and it's going to translate on screen. So, in this scene in particular with your backdrop, we stayed at that table the whole time when they were setting up cameras, and we just talked. So in a sense, it was kind of like a first date. And it really helped us create this intimacy in the moment of getting to know each other as the characters, because that's what we were doing off screen.
Got it, got it. And I know you know the saying, they say everything is bigger in Texas, but I
Yes,
wanted to kind
yes.
of, right, take that even closer to Houston, being that, George Foreman, he grew up in Houston, Fifth Ward. As a Houston native, can you just talk a little bit about how you feel that that developed him as a person, just being from Houston, and how that is different from anyone else, anywhere else in the world?
That's a really great question. Um, I think, especially at that time, I'm a little younger, so I wasn't around. during that particular time, but there are still neighborhoods in Houston that reflect what it looked like back then when he was growing up.
Mm.
Um, and I think seeing seeing sort of the slum, if you will, of Houston, and walking around in that, I did get a chance to go back home before we started filming and just take in the energy of Fifth Ward. Fifth Ward is a little gentrified now, but
Okay.
there are certain spots where it's
Right.
not. And just standing in that and in the energy of Houston, which is it's charged. It's slow, right? But um and people are polite in Houston, even though we're in Texas. People are very polite, but underneath that, there's a lot of um sort of program belief systems that
Mm.
do not serve a young black man growing up in Houston, Texas. So I think, you know, his economic situation coupled with the charged energy of Houston, the heat of Houston,
Mm.
um, growing up in the South, in Houston, in the heat. I mean, there's just so much that goes into being from Houston that I don't even think I could quite capture it in words. Um, he was always going to be different because he was from Houston. Houston just has its own energy and own culture. And he was always going to stand out. He was always going to be misunderstood in a way. And he was always going to, in a sense, be the underdog. Uh, but the thing is, he overcame that and put Houston on the map. So I'm proud.
Absolutely, absolutely. I did also want to ask you about what you knew about boxing coming in, and do you have a new appreciation for boxing now? Sometimes people have told me when they're in movies like this, it actually makes them a boxing fan, and other people say, well, they kind of recoil when they get to really know the violence that goes into it. So, how has your opinion been shaped by being in this movie about boxing?
I am with the fights. Okay.
Yeah,
I actually have a black belt in Shotokan karate. So
really.
I come from a martial arts background and little known fact, after I got my black belt, I switched over to boxing when I was in Atlanta.
Okay.
um I went just one time. I tried to switch
Okay.
over, I should say. I went to the gym one time and the guy was like, let's see you, you know, in the ring, because I told him that I had a black belt. And I'm so used to kicking, I kicked and I got kicked out. That was my last stunt with boxing. I appreciated the sport. I'm more of an MMA fan
Okay.
personally. But after watching it, you know, I started, and I actually saw some of the fights on set that they were doing, some of the boxing matches,
Mhm.
and talked to Chris Davis about, you know, some of the techniques and finding the parallels between that and the fighting strategy and martial arts. I really appreciate it. So now I watch boxing matches on my own, right? I just saw the Shakur Stevenson fight a couple of weeks ago,
Okay.
a big baby fight, which was great. Um, I really have just grown to appreciate the fact that they're not just throwing punches, because to a martial artist, that's what it looks like.
Right.
But they're not. There's a mean strategy behind it. So I'm a boxing fan now.
Very happy to hear that. Very happy to hear that. I also
Yeah.
think that your characters, just your presentation says a lot. I love what you do with your hair with all your particular characters, especially when you wear your
Thank you.
natural hair. Tell me about the importance of being able to do that with your characters. I know some people feel a little bit of apprehension sometimes about showing their natural hair, especially us, but I feel like you've never really had that type of trepidation. Just talk a little bit about why that's important to you.
Authenticity.
Mm.
Authenticity and representation. I grew up conditioned to believe that straight hair, permed hair was better, was more beautiful. And it wasn't until I went to Spelman College where I reprogrammed my brain and really saw all these beautiful Black women wearing their natural hair proudly. And I took that. And by the time I got out of college, started growing my own natural, you know, started going, transitioning back to my natural journey, my natural state. And I got into Hollywood in 2016, and my natural hair wasn't well received at all. I was actually told that I needed a makeover, which she was just talking about my hair. But in that, I knew that I could not go back to weaves. I could not go back to perms because it felt like I was not living in my truth.
Mhm.
And when I play these characters, my biggest um, thing is in saying I'm going to wear my natural hair. I talk with the director. I tell them they know this beforehand, and I come up with hairstyles, hair inspo, right? And I think it's important for young Black girls to see that their hair is beautiful and can be worn in so many different styles. Um, and to embrace who they are and be proud of it. So I'm very firm about rocking my natural hair in all of its glory, however we can make it work for that particular character. But I think it can always work, right? Unless I'm
Mhm.
playing a character in particular who is trying to hide herself and trying to hide that sort of natural state. I get that. But if we can make it work, let's do that because it's important. And it's important to me.
Absolutely. And that's perfect to go into my next question. So I'm a Morehouse graduate.
It
And when I found out that you were, yeah, Miss Morehouse College, I was like, oh, perfect.
was.
And then I saw your old video for Ebony where you were quoting Benjamin Mays and all that. I'm like, ah, she's perfect. She's perfect. So just talk about you kind of touched on it already, but just the importance of that HBCU background going to film and how that prepared you for Hollywood. That's like the perfect setup to me.
Oh man. I will like just claim HBCUs to the day I die. I was also Miss HBCU.
Hmm.
So being at a historically Black institution feels like a home you never knew you had. It's a safe space. It's honestly the only time I ever truly felt safe for a long period of time in my life. And because of that, I was able to heal. I was able to come into my own and understand who I am, or start to, at least. It was a space where I was allowed to make mistakes and not have them be um, you know, just a consequence, a dire consequence to my future. Um, Being at an HBCU and walking in the same steps as, greats, Martin Luther King Jr.
Hmm.
So many greats came out of Morehouse and Spelman. It fills you with a pride and a walk that no one can ever take away.
Absolutely.
And coming into Hollywood, I had that. I had the confidence because I went to an HBCU, because I was seen, not just because I was a Black woman, but also I was seen on a spiritual level. And I think having that confidence and being able to walk tall and proudly allowed me to not cower when things got rough or when people told me, things that I didn't necessarily agree with about myself. So I will forever give my love and appreciation to Spelman and Morehouse. I have this saying, I graduated from Spelman, but I went to Morehouse because I
There
really
you
did.
go. Right. So my last question for you would be that was going to be my last question, but then I saw your background and I see Dorothy Dandridge back there. And I was
Yeah.
thinking, you would be a great if they ever did a Carmen Jones remake. I'm looking right at you. I feel like you would be perfect. But my question would be if you could have any type of role like that, like a remake role of a famous picture, what's the first one that comes to mind that you would love to tackle?
Ooh. Uh,
Any role whatsoever that you can think of.
I would love to do a Dorothy.
Mhm.
I would love to do Eartha though. Uh,
Okay. No?
yeah, I'm a big Eartha Kitt fan. More of a biopic, but I can't think of this. Anna, she had this. I can't remember the name of it, but it'll come to me. It was a movie she did with Sammy Davis Jr. It was a black and white film.
Okay.
Um, I would love to remake that. It was awesome.
Perfect. We'll put that in the universe. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time. You were amazing, my Spelman sis, and just looking
Thank
forward
you.
to everything you have going in the future.
Thank you, my brother. I really appreciate you and keep doing the thing. I'm very proud of you.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.